are committed to the cause. They're passionate, they want to see the change, and they're happy that they're here because this is the implementation COP. So on that note, we're going to start with 2 keynote addresses. They're somewhat interlinked, and they are from the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. I will call upon the stage Kevin Conrad from the Coalition for Rainforest Nations, and he's going to do an introductory keynote, and then following him will be Jörg Eigendorf. Is that correct? Eigendorf, and he's from Deutsche Bank AG, and he will follow Kevin. Kevin, up to you, onto the stage. Let's give him a warm hand of applause.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is always the worst spot to speak when everybody's coming back from lunch. 2 reasons. No one comes back from lunch at the same time and everyone's half asleep. But here we are. All right, so I have a few comments. I'm sort of titling them Finance for Nature and Its Conundrums. We as humans have been taking from nature since the very first time we called ourselves or discovered ourselves as humans. We've been drinking the water that nature rains on us and puts in rivers. The rivers clean up the water so that it's drinkable. From that basic start, we've gone even further. This very problem that we're here at the COP to deal with, the question of fossil fuels. All we pay as humans is for the extraction and distribution. We're paying nothing for the millions of years of pressure and heat that nature provided to make the oil itself. We take that for free. One of the things that I love about the COP is that you sit on a lot of panels and you learn things. So let me use some things I learned yesterday to make this point again. It takes 16,000 bees a week to make a teaspoon of honey. Now, if we paid all of those bees minimum wage and asked them to make a cup of honey, how much do you think that would cost? Someone crunched the numbers and it was 300,000 euros, right? But our market failures take that value creation from nature, assign it 0 value, and then proceed with life paying only the marginal costs on nature's services. This also relates to forests. Tropical forests are removing, 7 to 11 billion tons of carbon out of the atmosphere every year. These forests have been cared for by indigenous and tribal people for millennia. The North decided that these rainforests should just continue to pull that carbon out of the atmosphere for free. What does that mean? That means the North has to reduce carbon less, and it means they don't have to pay for those ecosystem services. What happens when markets fail is we begin to lose those services. We will run out of oil, and we can't wait around for the Earth to make some more. We are looking at the destruction of our bees. We're not caring for them sufficiently, and that ecosystem can also, or ecosystem service can also disappear. So if we're going to start valuing nature, how do we do it? The way we as humans have done it so far is we start with public finance. We usually go, well, this is difficult. Let's get the government to think about it. Let's get not private sector yet, but let's get foundations to experiment. And that's what we've done with forests. We've tried to build a set of learning. How do we value the ecosystem services of forests? How do we begin to value the services that are needed for those communities that care for them? That became Article 5 of the Paris Agreement. A year ago, we came up with Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. And this is markets. Now, markets are difficult. Markets can distribute wealth, but they can also distribute it in very small pools. And what we need in this case is that markets need to distribute wealth to the owners of the assets, not to the traders or not to those that want to consolidate these assets, but we've got to value the forest assets in some way. Now, let's be honest. We can never value a rainforest accurately. It's impossible. So what are we actually trying to do in many of these cases? We're finding a proxy value that changes behavior. So what is the proxy value of carbon that makes you want to reduce carbon rather than emit carbon? What is the proxy value of carbon that has a community be able to create a sustainable livelihood that supports them so that they're not extracting from the rainforest around them? What are these proxy values? Let's just admit, they're not real values, but they're proxy values for us as society to change our behavior for the sustainable outcomes that we want. So as we look at Article 6, as we look at Article 5, the challenge then becomes, if we've de-risked with the public finance and now we're bringing markets into being, how is it that we bring thoughtful companies into the mix and private sector to build on this architecture that has taken 2 decades to construct and find a way to bring in the power of markets for a sustainable outcome? And with that, I'm going to introduce Jörg Eigendorf, who is the CSO of Deutsche Bank, who's been giving this some thought.
Does this work?
It should.
Yeah, this works. Thank you very much, Kevin. Warm welcome to all of you after break. Let me try to wake you up, at least those who Kevin hasn't woken up yet. Our CEO once said, rainforests are a trust asset to humanity, and that means we are the trustees for humanity. And we've been terrible trustees because our CEO, that was Alfred Herrhausen in 1989. And since then, you can calculate 36 years have passed. And where are we in the protection of the rainforest? Where are we in supporting these countries who are hosting the rainforest to protect this trust asset for humanity? We have made almost no progress. The opposite is the case. Last year, we lost more than 6 million hectares of rainforest. And let's be very clear, that means we are losing the memory of this planet. And the world is heading for dementia. We are just losing our memory. So we decided 1 year ago to partner up with Kevin, Conrad, and with the Coalition for Rainforest Nations. And I personally thought to myself, now, why hasn't this happened yet? And there are many, many reasons. But I haven't found in this year a single hurdle which is impossible to overcome. So we are here now a year later, and we announced last Friday that together with the Coalition for Rainforest Nations, we are going to support Suriname and Honduras as the first 2 countries to issue a carbon rainforest credit according to Article 5.2 and Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. We feel sure enough to make this commitment with a letter of intent. The president of Honduras was there. Several ministers of both countries were there. André Dolago was there. And he has been incredibly supportive, the COP president, on the path to where we are right now. We felt sure enough to make this commitment. Does this mean we're almost there? No. We still have a lot of hurdles to overcome. First of all and foremost, it's about safeguards. And I find it interesting, Kevin just said something, and Kevin, I usually never dare to contradict you, but this time I do. A price for a rainforest carbon credit, for an ITMO, for a REDD Plus ITMO, for a voluntary carbon credit, it's not a proxy. The question is, what is a buyer willing to pay? And there comes a very interesting component. I think there will be an ideal price point The ideal price point is where the integrity is ensured to a degree that the buyers are willing to pay a premium price for the credit. And the good thing is, by that, finding that price point, you don't have less demand but more demand. Which effectively means if you want to take a shortcut and you leave out a lot of the safeguards, it would mean you will sell less ITMOs. Makes no sense at all. The turnover, the revenue for the countries will be lower. So now it's our job to start, or we have started already, and we've been in negotiations with Honduras and Suriname, in how these safeguards, what they could look like, and we go through them one by one by one. You may say now, oh, then take one of those standards which are out there. No, we're not. I don't want to straitjacket ourselves. It may need at the end a certain degree of flexibility, and the perfect may be the enemy of the good. Usually the perfect in sustainability, and I'm the CSO of Deutsche Bank, Chief Sustainability Officer, I can tell you in that space, the perfect is always the enemy of the good. If I had to deliver, I'll give you an example from a different field. 3 years ago, we decided we are now into making CO2 a KPI for Deutsche Bank in the management board compensation. That means we have 8 carbon sector pathways, and the adherence to these pathways is measured, and if the management board fails to do so, if we as a company fail to do so, the management board may lose up to 8% of the variable compensation it has. If somebody had told me then, we only go on the way if you have already introduced divisional carbon budgets, we would have never done it. I could have theorized for years and years. Why were we able to introduce carbon budgets eventually for CO2? For a very simple reason. Because we had already 100 transactions running through our net zero forum, have taken decisions on that, so we operationalized it. We learned while we were operationalizing, and eventually we were able to really have a system where I could go to the chairman of our company and say, I think we have it. It took us 3 years. I think the same will happen now with the Rainforest carbon credit. It won't take us 3 years. We will have the first, and I'm pretty sure we plan to have the first transaction next year. I don't commit to any numbers because I don't want to straitjacket us again. I don't want you to say, looking at the number afterwards, and say, oh, that's disappointing. Our goal is to have serious transaction next year. It needs a lot of work. We need to go through additionality, use of proceeds. We need to go through measurement, monitoring measurement, verification and reporting. We need to go environmental and social safeguards. All of that we need to do. We need to address the permanence issue. All of that needs to happen. And we are looking at best practice. And the good thing is we know already what best practice is. We know what standards we have out there. And let's face it, 5.2 and 6.2 are not precise enough, so you can still need to enhance them. So you need to work with them. They tell you, effectively 5.2 tells you what you have to do, but that leaves a lot of details aside. We are working towards best practice, and our goal is eventually to find a market price that is reflecting the quality of the product of the Rainforest carbon credit. And if you look at our communication last week, we promised it will be a high integrity one. Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg. Thank you so much for your wonderful insights. I love the collaboration between an institution like Deutsche Bank and also our Rainforest partners. So thank you so much for that. So on to the next keynote address. I have Marcelo Freitas. Hope I said your name correctly. The CEO of Prospera. If you could kindly come up to the stage and present your keynote address. Marcelo? All right, Flora will fetch Marcelo. But yes, I think it's important to identify. Marcelo's here. Wonderful. Welcome, Marcelo. No. I'm very well, thank you. Are you going to jump up or are you going to do the royal graceful walk onto the stage? Brilliant. Welcome. And I think before Marcelo starts, it's important to identify them as one of our key partners of the energy coalitions working on powering a just and accelerated transition. Welcome, Marcelo.
Boa tarde, pessoal.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcelo Freitas. I am the founder and CEO of Prospera, which is a green loyalty tech for energy and which has a business model in the energy transition sector that's a bit different. And basically, I will go over it very briefly in the short period of time that we have. I have worked in the energy sector ever since 1998. So I've worked in the sector for almost 30 years. I had the privilege throughout these years of working in the big generation, transmission, and distribution of energy projects, especially servicing big consumers that migrated to the free market to have better pricing and competitiveness conditions globally. And based on all of this knowledge and through all of that know-how, in 2020, we invested in a new company, Prospera, whose goal was producing clean and renewable energy so as to offer that energy as a benefit to the customers within an incentives program. So since we're short on time here, I basically will skip a couple of slides and I have prepared a very short speech. So, ladies and gentlemen, the future depends not only on generating clean energy, but on ensuring that everyone can benefit from it. Brazil is the renewable energy country. Over 85% of our electricity comes from renewable sources, the sun, the wind, the water, biomass. We have the greenest matrix amongst the largest economies of the planet, thanks to the abundance of our natural resources and the application of technology, which is one of the most advanced in the world. But there is a paradox that needs to be faced head on. The final cost of energy for thousands of Brazilians is one of the highest ones in the world. The energy is clean, but the bill is full of distortions. Between the plant and the consumer, we lose justice, efficiency, and hope.
This distortion generates a vicious cycle. Non-payment, technical loss, the famous gimmickies that we use here, and we also have the highest tariffs, one of the greatest in the world regarding the level of income in our population. Who pays correctly also pays for those who can't or are not able to pay, and the result is an energy that excludes when it should include. The energy transition will only be just if it includes those who need it the most. Without inclusion, there is no transition. There is just a new means of inequality now that is painted in green. The true challenge in Brazil is not to generate clean energy. It is to make its access democratic. While some hear megawatts, millions of families live with candles or in fear of having their energy bill coming. It should be an essential right, but for many Brazilians, it became a luxury. From this discomfort, what came from it is the question that changes everything. What if energy could become a benefit, and if people could get it instead of paying for it? The answer is in the union between technology, impact, and goals or propositions. Companies from now can purchase eco points with a digital and green coin created to pay for people and the planet. Each coin represents a real impact: clean energy, environmental preservation, and social inclusion. People accumulate eco points while consuming products from partner companies, participating in campaigns, or watching ads in our platform. and these points are changed for discounts in their electric bill. So energy becomes a benefit and their electric bill can reach €0. With that simple inversion in logic to make consumption into impact, we have increased the purchase power of people, we have helped the planet, and generated value to the companies that belong to the movement. Everybody wins. The consumer saves money, the companies have a fidelity through the ECOA points that are being made available for incentives and so on, acquisition of clients, the planet breathes, and the electric system reduces losses, non-payment, and irregularities. This is a new virtuous cycle that is positive, completely opposite to what we have nowadays. We are in face of the greatest opportunity in history to make sustainability into something that everyone can live with, not only admire. It is important to remember that when we look at the Brazilian population, especially for the less privileged ones, we notice that the theme of sustainability is far away from most of the population. The world needs $1 trillion per year to solve the climate challenge, equivalent to 1% of the global GDP. If 1% of the revenue from companies and governments become impact points, positive impact points, we will be able to finance the energy and social transition at the same time. It's not an utopia, it's economic engineering with a goal. It's the lucrative ESG, profitable ESG for all in practice. Brazil can and should be the leader of the world, showing that sustainability and inclusion can walk hand in hand, that clean energy is not just a climate goal, but an instrument of dignity. When the energy reaches all, the hope also lights up. And this is what we are doing with the ECOA points, lightening the bulbs and generating inclusion and making the planet prosper. The future that we want is not of the cheapest energy, but the one that is fairer. A future in which each family can say, my light is on because the planet is also on, and where Brazil can be the country that shows to the world that sustainability and justice fit in the same bill. Be part of this movement, be part of the future, and let's have an excellent event.
Thank you so much for that. Wonderful. So we're now going to have a fantastic panel, quite exciting, very empowering topic, powering progress, financing just and accelerated energy transitions. Our moderator is Amir Sokolowski from CDP. I hope I said your surname properly. If not, do forgive me. But let's welcome him to the stage.
I'm going to take one. Yep, they work. Thank you very much. Before I give a slight framing to the topic, I thought I'd invite the rest of the panel up if they are here. If Michael, when I can see, and Helen Poderosa, and if Mark is here as well, I can. Oh, sorry, I cannot see. If you'd like to come up, I'll give a slight framing and then I'll introduce the subject and you can introduce yourself. First of all, thank you very much for your patience. I'm Amir Sokolowski. I'm the Global Director for Climate at CDP. I've been at many COPs, but today, just to put us in the context, in COP30, We've heard implementation COP several times, but COP30 actually is. The presidency talks about inclusive delivery with impact and fairness. That is the basis of the action agenda. The action agenda is one of the most, in my opinion, complex but comprehensive mechanisms to link what is international and national policy with delivery, not only with the subnationals, but with the financial sector and with the real economy. At the heart of that, since the global stocktake in COP28, is the energy transition. Energy accounts for about 70 to 75% of emissions. The global stocktake outcome clearly outlined tripling of renewable energy access and doubling of its efficiency. Very, very clear goals. But in the context of the action agenda, they have to be served in a particular way. Brazil has been leading on this through renewable expansion, sustainable industry, and a lot of shared prosperity. But even where the technology exists, even where the intention exists, finance is either lacking or going into an unbalanced dispersion of it. We're here today to discuss what the pathway is, and I'm incredibly proud to have a panel that includes everyone within the private sector that would need to be involved. Well, there is a financial institution, there is a technology and innovation accelerator, and there is a corporate. And I'm proud to have them on the panel. I'm going to let them introduce themselves before I start asking questions. So please, I'll start with you.
So thank you. I will start for inclusion purpose to do my self-description. So I am a black with a very clear skin woman. I'm with a yellow and blue jacket, and also with my Afro hairstyle. So I'm honored to be here. I am a director of corporate responsibility and human rights at L'Oréal Group in Brazil, and the first Afro-descendant women to be in the COMEX, showing already a statement and how important sustainability in a country as ours has to be in the table making the decisions. So I'm glad to be here, and with our colleagues that we had a great opportunity to align. And also just to mention, L'Oréal as a group was a company that 9 years consecutively was AAA in CDP. So when I saw that Amir would be moderating, we're very happy to be connecting directly with you. So thank you for this panel.
Thank you for being a AAA, which is a very distinct group.
Thank you so much. For my part, I'm Mark Moutinho, and I'm the Brazil program lead for the Industrial Transition Accelerator, which is an initiative that was launched at COP28 by the COP28 presidency, Bloomberg Philanthropies, and UNFCCC. And in a nutshell, the objective of the ITA is to catalyze investment in commercial scale, low emissions industrial projects around the world. So very keen to bring the perspective of heavy industry to the discussion, energy intensive industry. So really looking forward to the conversation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Wen from Taiwan. I work for Kasei United Bank. It is wholly owned by Kasei Financial Holding Company. And our holding company is the largest financial holding company in Taiwan. We serve almost 63% of Taiwan's population. And it is operating across more than 10 countries in Asia Pacific. As a regional player, we are very focused on all the sustainable link products and services to provide to our client, not only in Taiwan, but also clients in Asia Pacific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be with such a distinguished panel. Before I start asking questions to each of you, which we will, I'd like to ask a question of each of you, which is a similar one. So, because CDP is a data platform, if I don't use percentage when I'm on stage, I think I'll be fired, so I have to use at least a few numbers. CDP's recent research discovered that while 72% of companies disclosing, I'm talking about the real economy, have low carbon transition plans, only about 11% of them have CapEx and OpEx that are aligned with those transition plans. That is only one representation of some of the problems and the issues, and I mean good faith issues, many of them when they're asked why they are afraid of regulatory or market risks, and therefore don't align that finance. So I want to ask the question in the context of the energy transition, be it renewable energy access, be it capacity, be it dispersal. Given that that this needs to be installed in the context of inclusivity, in the context of fairness and justice as well, what do you think? There is a false dichotomy, in my opinion, between the three factors. But the question is, what do you think is the fastest way for your particular sector, whether it is heavy industry in terms of an accelerator, whether it is as a corporate with a huge supply chain, or whether it is one of the biggest investors? What do you think is the single biggest challenge in your sector, and what is the single pathway, I guess, that you would take, the one thing that you would change or that you use now as a lever? I'm happy to either have someone volunteer or I will randomly point.
Happy to kick us off. I would say in terms of the biggest challenge that we're seeing within the sort of heavy industrial sectors, and by this I mean sectors like steel, cement, concrete, sectors, the so-called hard-to-abate industries. I think what we're seeing in there is that because this is an industry that is more emergent than, say, renewables, for instance, you still have this challenge of, if you want to produce a ton of low-emission steel today, it will unfortunately be a bit more expensive than a ton of conventional steel. The so-called green premium, two words that make me die a little bit inside every time I hear them. And I think what we need to do is, ultimately, if we're able to get projects off the ground, if we're able to get a first wave of these clean industrial projects financed and built, costs will come down for everyone. And so I think the real challenge that we have is, in the short term, how do we create demand for clean industrial products to get the first wave of projects underpinned and ultimately financed? And so if there's one thing that I'd like everyone to take away from today is demand is really the key. I think in that respect, public policy has a very big role to play. I'll pause there.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to give everyone a little background from macro perspective. If you look at the international brand, from, say, NVIDIA, it's the most famous chip company in the States, to Apple, Alphabet, or some famous consumer brand like Nestle, even Adidas, they are 100% focused on green. So what they're going to do as their supply chain, and if you look at Asia's industry, Asia is very strong for providing supply chain for this famous international branding. So under this pressure, all the supplier has to follow certain requests by this global name to fulfill their green target. So you can see, gradually we see the market, no matter in Taiwan, China, Korea, Japan, Australia, lots of new projects related to renewable energy are developing, from solar, wind farm, no matter onshore or offshore, storage, lots of business opportunity under this global trend in the market. So I do believe there's a transforming period of time. And yes, it is a very challenge for all of us, but the challenge is with very huge opportunity from industry or financial sector. Thank you.
And on my side, I always think a company a size as ours has GDP bigger than a lot of African countries, for example. So the power we have to influence the value chain and also our clients and educate our consumers, it's important for us to have really conscious about this role and to be in COP in a moment like this. And I think it's pretty much a reminder of those companies and an implementation point of view to see what the cases have been doing, what the financial, how can we help the smaller ones, the value chain. But agreeing with both of you about regulation, and I think it's a key point. Sometimes we need some push for some incentive to go faster, and also the value chain. Something that I think we should still work with, it's work sectorized and really beside companies. Some of the solutions and innovations, they will not be able to work for itself. So collectively, agendas, and I think we have a couple of NGOs and CDP, I can say that it's in your side also doing this kind of agenda. How can we see more than our own ambition, but collectively how we can work? And I think this connection with NGOs can be key to go faster.
Thank you very much. I, of course, welcome the last bit. Thank you very much. I'm also relieved within this COP, CDP recently, due to geopolitical pressures, in the past we used to avoid bad naming, but now we were told to be cautious and not give credit to companies when required, and it is a delight for me to see all over COP that companies take that credit. I'm quite proud of what they're doing. So it gives me hope as well. I think those answers are really, I tried to sum them up, and I will sum them up at the end. But just to dig in a little bit more, and if you don't mind, Michael, that I start with you, if that's okay. So Cathay Financial is an Asian leader in green finance and sustainable investment. We've seen, exactly as you say, we see momentum in many areas, but especially in your region, that is absolutely noted, especially in the climate finance landscape. What is the most promising avenue in the region? If you could dig in a bit, I mean, I know that it perhaps give an example. And how is this leveraged to mainstream it or to scale it up? How would it fit and align with the action agenda in the context of justice, etc.?
Well, to my observation, there are lots of the business opportunity. I mean, I'm a banker. From business opportunity, I do see there are lots of opportunity. I can share some of our achievement in Taiwan or in Southeast Asia. We're starting to provide solar financing back to 2011 in Taiwan. Right now, we already support finance more than 200 projects for solar farm in Taiwan. And starting from 2015, we financed the first offshore wind farm in Taiwan Strait. Nowadays, if you have a chance, fly over to that area, you will see thousands of turbines sitting in the Taiwan Strait and working properly. What does that mean? It means people are more reluctant to use their electricity from traditional fossil generator. So people are looking for more development from renewable energy sector, from solar, wind farm, hydro, or thermal. Those new equipment can create a more clean energy for usage. And as I mentioned earlier, from IEA indicate, from now on, every year we need 500 billion US to invest to fulfill the gap between what we need and what we have so far for green energy. So I do believe there's lots of change, and it is a global trend for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark, if I can follow similar order. So ITA works with partners to decarbonize heavy industry, as you said. What are the levers that are pulled to enable this? Where is this effort better established, and what's the next challenge? How can industrial innovation, public policy you were talking about earlier on, unlock speed and scale? I say this specifically also in the context of disclosure and the recent news that came out today regarding the vote in the EU. I don't know what effect there is, not to go to particular geopolitical context, but it is an unstable geopolitical state. So just to see how that can be dealt with.
You know, very, very good question. I think just to give a sense of sort of how the ITA is operating, where we're based, what we're doing. You know, the ITA is an international initiative, but you know, we recognize that if you want to get projects financed and built, that is always a challenge that you're going to need to address in your local context. And so the ITA, you know, among the many things that it does, it has a series of country programs. The first of those is right here in Brazil, which is what I lead. But we've also recently kicked off programs in the Middle East region, in the UAE, in Egypt, and also most recently in India. We focus particularly on emerging economies because in many cases, these are the regions of the world that have the best fundamental conditions to do green industry in the future. So it makes sense to focus there. And also these are the regions of the world that are still industrializing. So it makes a lot of sense to try and get that industrialization to happen in a green way from the very beginning. You know, speaking to the challenges that you mentioned, I would say that based on the experience that we have here in Brazil, you know, we're currently working with 15 commercial scale projects in the country across 5 different sectors: steel, cement, aluminium, chemicals, and aviation. So we have a good cross-section of what high ambition green industrialization looks like in Brazil and what are some of the recurring challenges. And I think there's 3 that I think are probably worth emphasizing. One is the question of energy infrastructure. It's no good building a green hydrogen project if you can't connect it to the grid and get your power supply. There's the question of demand, which I've already mentioned before. You won't get financing if you can't prove that there will be a market for your product. And then finally, the financing itself. You can have an excellent business case, but particularly in emerging economies like Brazil, where there are challenges around the cost of capital, that cost of capital can undermine an otherwise attractive business case. You'll notice that I didn't mention policy as one of the challenges because from our point of view, policy is really a solution. It can be applied in any of these areas and there's a number of things that can be done to address it. But not to sort of harp on the same point, I would say that if there's any particular area that we want to apply policy and prioritize that lever, it really needs to be on the demand question. Because not to oversimplify, but I'll do it for the sake of discussion. If you can unlock demand, all of the other challenges get a lot easier. If there's a market for green industrial products, then financing will be a lot easier to come by. Investors will want to invest in these green industrial projects. And similarly with energy infrastructure, if there is a clear case to build a green factory in a region and the grid operator knows that it will be built and financed and eventually go into production, then the country has all the reason to build the energy infrastructure in that area. So yeah, policy is critical, and within all of the challenges that green industry faces, I think demand really stands out as the most important.
Thank you very much. Very clear. And I have many questions to come back, but I'll keep those for a bit later. Helen. Laura, as the representation of the real economy here, and as you mentioned, a very consistent leader in the field, L'Oréal has very ambitious decarbonization goals. How would you accelerate the transition through them, and what are your main capacities to do so? But not only that, arguably, as you yourself mentioned, there's a bit more of a responsibility there. There's a huge financial gap discussed, and I'd love to hear your position also on the role of the real economy enhancing and enabling, covering that gap or filling that gap.
Thank you for the question. I was listening to Marcelo previous, and I really struggled on that. I have been thinking about the role of Brazil and innovation. We have a country, as you said, we have everything in nature that help us to have a more renewable metrics of energy. And we have the sun, we have the nature, 20% of our biodiversity in the world is here, but we have the people. And the first time in Brazil, 65 years that L'Oréal is present, we have a CEO that is Brazilian. And people with our ancestrally, like indigenous, the slavers of Africa that came to work, and European. I study in Cambridge about jeitinho brasileiro, the way we do things, the way this branch of energy and people that can come with amazing ideas and with so few resources. And basing on that, in 2019, L'Oréal as a group created a program called L'Oréal for the Future. It's our platform for sustainability with 15 ambitions and 3 pillars. How we transform our business, how can we influentiate and empower our communities, and goes here, communities we work around. Also, we can see our clients in supply chain. And the third one, and it's exactly how we're contributing in financing, it's an important role on that, to contribute to the challenge of the world we live. Thinking on that, on decarbonization, they announced a reduced absolute scope for 1 and 2, a reduction by 57% compared to 2029. And for scope 3, G emissions, transforming to bring 28%. So our Brazilian team, looking to this continental country that the logistics are pretty much on the ground. Transportation is a key challenge, and the only way to do it would be innovating. Taking advantage of these already green metrics and the difficulties and issues of an economy that is still linear, but we have a lot of opportunity to go circular. In this case, with the Federal University in Brazil, of Rio de Janeiro, our teams started an innovation work group and invited stakeholders. And with that, we worked for over a year, and we met there Gás Verde, that one was in the beginning of their journey as a small player of a startup, a small profit organization that was looking for biomethane as an opportunities. As you know, Brazil, we have a landfill and a very waste management agenda that it's very complex, and with a policy that it's national policy that finds challenge the mayors and the municipalities to close their landfills. And we are already 20 years from this policy, and the regulations just came this year. So it's a journey, but again, biomethane is a gas that we've isolate, and they can be prepared by the materials that both for agriculture or that ones that we waste we can see in the landfills. So the projection, if we see the landfills that we already have in the country it's 3 million tons of opportunities to get the biogas. So it's a number that it's a potential big one, and it's separating this for the government issues and how the private sector could be the one who pushing this agenda. So we, that time, in 2022, we decided to move our distribution center, that was a huge project, thought also internally to move the distribution center that was in Rio de Janeiro closer to our plant that is in São Paulo. So we reduced 400 kilometers of translation, translado is in English, to logistic, right? It would be bad. I forgot the word in English. So that already was a big change and helped us to reduce and think differently. Today, we found some partners, like Hater. It's a logistic company that invested with Scania. We worked a lot in this group to make it better, the trucks, and make it happen. So our outbound, like the difference between the plant to the distribution center, 100% using the biomethane. We also changed our processes, and the plant also operations started to use biomethane. So we became a renewable energy in the sites together with other iolic and other solar panel. 3 years before our goal, we became 100% renewable. And in the end, we could have this opportunity to start from 4 trucks to double it in 2022. And in the end, this year, we are going to the south. We are going also to other states, probably Minas Gerais. With our clients, we have awards that from the pharma and food sector, from Haya and also to Asai. There's a big friend that is doing that in a collective way. And it's interesting that today we are seeing the opportunity to have the first gas station, is like biogas station, close to our center. And we are stimulating other companies to do the same, especially in the north and the northeast of Brazil. So again, it's an example of doing that collectively and also working to escalate with a group bigger than just L'Oréal. We will not be able to advance even Cas Verde without the other companies in the sector.
Thank you.
Sorry, may I add some color on this topic? Most people will believe plus concept is the easier way to think. So we talk about increase renewable energy supply, pump into our electricity system. But if we think about from the other way around, can we do something to save the waste of energy? For example, if we can increase the resilience of power grid, that can save something. If we can further introduce smart meter or smart city concept through the most advanced technology, we also can save lots of waste electricity. So I will suggest if we can think how should we do in the both sides, it can create a more strong resilience electricity policy indeed.
Thank you. Actually, you jumped in exactly to where I wanted to take this. red light in front of me is beeping, but before I release us and say thank you, I'm going to say a quick question. I've been to many, many, many COPs, and one of the problems with them is usually that you don't know exactly, there isn't an alignment of what is everyone's result. In 1927, we crossed the Atlantic for the first time in flight. In 1936, there were commercial flights. It took New York City 21 years to move from too many horses as a danger to only cars are allowed. Technology sometimes jumps very, very fast, and sometimes it fails on the way. That is true for any social change. So I guess I would ask all of you, and you each come from your unique overview of strategic financial investment, overview of sectoral pathways to develop, and an overview of implementing particular capacity in the context, and I think that's the important context that COP30 is trying to bring to this, in the context of justice and inclusivity, but also in the context of scaling up what you believe to be solutions. What would be the one abstract thing? For me, it's usually if we were able to agree on the definition of risk. Just to give the example, I believe the world would jump loops in 12 months. So for each one of you, what's your hope from this COP for the one thing to come out, whether it's the COP itself in terms of negotiations or whether it is the agreements in the private sector or in the blended agreement? A few seconds to let someone consider and jump.
I'm happy to start us off. I think because from the perspective of the ITA and the sort of task that we have in front of us, COP is very important, but at the end of the day, it's what happens every single day of the year between COPs that matters. The projects that we're supporting, that we need to see developed in the world, won't be built overnight. It's a long effort to try and get them financed and off the ground. But I would say that something that would be enormously valuable is a little bit speaking to what you were saying before about definitions, like in your case of risk. I think something that would be enormously valuable, particularly for the sectors that we look at the ITA, is to have a kind of harmonization of the way that you account for the emissions, the embodied emissions of industrial products. How do you actually properly measure the amount of carbon that is going into producing a ton of steel or a ton of ammonia or what have you? Because a lot of the products that we're talking about here are internationally traded products. There's enormous opportunity for clean industry, not just for countries to service their domestic markets, but also to export and create new industrial value chains that span the world. But in order to do that, we all need to agree on what is green steel, what is green cement. A lot of work, to be fair, is being done on this topic, but given that this is a multilateral forum where we bring together voices from around the world, I would love to see greater harmonization on these topics, because that will be very powerful for unlocking that demand that I keep talking about so much.
I hope the announcement at GHG Protocol and ISO to create will help. Sorry, Helen, I saw you take the microphone, so.
That's okay. I think this COP, for me, it's a highlight or a tipping point for specifically for companies that are in Brazil. Is a very important moment to also bring awareness to the global teams about these innovation opportunities that we have from Brazil to other. And for long, I think globally, the Europeans and the way we see things is from Eurocentric going to the markets. And the market is changing. Things are changing. And we have amazing solutions all over the world, and especially from the global south. And I think to be here in Brazil, in Belém, it's a great opportunity. And as a team, local team, we worked for a year in making awareness and with our stakeholders to be here together in pillars as decarbonization and forums, talking about just transition and also financing. So, for example, L'Oreal, since 2020 until 2030, we will invest 345 million euros in financing from accelerating programs from our value chain to fund for women. Also for climate emergency, but there is a twist here that 70% of the fund for emergency is for prevention and just 30% for the real emergency. So that's also something that I really expect from this COP about adaptation. Adaptation is a concept that changes the way we see things. When I started working in social responsibility 25 years ago, we used to say that sustainability would be for the next generations. And what's happening, it's right here, right now. The heats, are the floods, everywhere, all the time. If you're rich or poor, very democratic. And we are all on risk. And now to have the opportunity to put together different countries to concise about what we want to do now, because we already know what to have to do, what will be the priorities, and how companies, for example, have the power also to do investments robust as we do.
I hope the indicators from the global goal of adaptation will help that, put the finance and create security, then I agree. Last but not least.
Well, people always talk about if this project bankable or investable. So to me, I think from risk perspective, it is important. And how do we solve this trouble if we face a new project? For example, we did some brand new project in Taiwan. My team will structure convincing terms so that when I talk to my risk officer, I can convince him. Sometimes we also need third party provide insurance so that we, at least from commercial perspective, at least we do something and we structure something to make sure, at least from bankable perspective, this project can be measurable or can be covered by certain insurance. So people will get more confidence when you introduce new project or new product into the market. I think that's the learning curve for everyone from financial sector. Gradually, when people understand more in depth of this project or product, then people feel more confidence for the coming new deals. So I think that cannot make it overnight. It still takes some time to make everyone feel confidence and understand how does the financial market work for this idea.
I'm hopeful that the existence of Insurance House here would put the context and the use in a correct place, but it goes back to the GGA as well, I agree. We're over time. Thank you very, very much. I think that was a brilliant panel. Thank you very much for your patience. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
No, we could go on and on and on. We'd love that, but the show must go on.